I slammed the cabinet shut. The pill bottle was empty. I tilted it anyway. Shook it. Nothing. I checked the date on the prescription taped to the fridge. Refill due last week. I'd been stretching pills, splitting doses. My chest had started to tighten at night. Once it woke me. Once I couldn't breathe for 6 full seconds. I picked up the phone. Logan answered on speaker. I heard Celine laughing in the background glass clinking. Dinner party. Voices I didn't know. Hey, Mom, make it quick. We've got people over. I paused, then said it. I need 500. It's the refill. Heart meds. Silence. The kind that settles too fast. 500, he repeated, then laughed. You're still taking those? I didn't answer. Mom, he said, lowering his voice. You're 78. I mean, come on. What's the point in the background? Celine asked. What's she want now? Her meds. Logan said. Heart stuff. She wants to live forever, I guess. Laughter. Dull and full. They laughed like I couldn't hear them. I'll call you back, he said, and hung up. I stood in the kitchen holding the receiver to my ear, long after the tone had gone flat. Then I pulled it from the wall. The next morning, I went anyway. Logan opened the door with his free hand. The other held a spatula dripping with butter. The house smelled like meat. Toast. My stomach clenched. Oh, he said. You came. Celine didn't look up from her phone. I sat down at the edge of the couch, balancing my purse on my knees. My fingers were numb. Not from the cold. I wouldn't ask, I said quietly. But it's important. I can pay you back when my check clears. He scraped eggs from a pan and dropped them on a plate. Shrugged. I just think he said, at a certain age, you stop fighting nature. I watched the yolk spread across the white. Watched him stab it with his fork. Celine spoke without looking. Maybe it's time to think long-term. Assisted living. Less pressure on all of us. I didn't reply. I held out the prescription. Folded. Creased. Logan didn't touch it. Leave it, he said. We'll look at it later. I stood. My coat slipped from my shoulder. No one moved to help. He walked me to the door. Opened it halfway. You should have planned better, Mom, he said. This is hard for us too. Then he closed it. I walked back down the driveway. One hand in my pocket. One gripping the prescription. The wind picked up. My chest burned again. I sat at the bus stop bench and didn't move. When I got home, I checked the bank account. 128.40. I opened the drawer next to the fridge, pulled out the envelope with the house deed, still sealed. I didn't open it. I just placed the prescription on top. Then I made myself a cup of coffee. No sugar, no milk, just heat and bitterness. Then I opened the window and let the cold in, waiting for the next reason not to ask again. I stepped off the porch and kept walking. Didn't wait for Logan to offer a ride. He wouldn't. He never did. The wind sliced through my coat. I pulled it tighter, head down. The sidewalks were cracked. I knew where each dip was where water pooled in spring, where weeds split the concrete. I'd walked these streets for 43 years. The bus stop bench was cold, metal against bone. I sat anyway. Didn't lift my hand to wave at the passing cars. No one looked. The bus came late. I climbed up, held the rail tight, nodded to the driver. He didn't nod back. I sat near the back. 2 boys argued about sneakers. A mother scrolled on her phone, her toddler crying in bursts. I folded my hands in my lap and watched the window, watched the town slip past in Layer's gas station church, the old school now a storage center. I didn't think. I didn't cry. I just watched. Home smelled stale. The air inside didn't move. I flicked on the kitchen light. Nothing. I hit the fridge door. The bulb buzzed once, then glowed dull yellow. Still worked. Barely. The shelves were nearly empty. Butter, a bruised apple, half a jar of mustard. I took 2 crackers from the tin and sat at the table. Ate them slowly. Let them turn to dust on my tongue. I opened the cupboard. No more soup cans. No oatmeal. I'd made it stretch. Too far. I boiled water. Drank it plain, holding the mug with both hands. I checked the mailbox. Nothing but coupons and a credit card offer. "You're pre-approved," it shouted in red. I dropped it in the trash. Back inside, I turned off the heater. Too expensive to run all night. I undressed in the dark. Pulled the blanket over me. Laid flat. Eyes open. The room didn't make a sound. Even the pipes had given up. The phone didn't ring. I thought of my old co-workers. Most were gone, moved, died, forgotten. I listened for one thing to anchor myself: a car door, a branch tapping glass, even the heater creaking. Nothing came, only the sound of my own breath, slower now. Morning scratched at the blinds. I sat up. My chest ached, but steady. No dizziness. I pulled the blanket back, stood slowly, and reached for the cardigan on the chair. Then I opened the drawer by the fridge again, took out the envelope. Not the deed this time. The one with the red corners. The one I hadn't touched in 22 years. I baked the cookies anyway, used the last stick of butter, rolled the dough slow, pressed each fork mark just right. Raisin oatmeal. Logan's favorite when he was 10. I let them cool, wrapped them in foil, placed them in a box lined with paper towels. It was all I had. I walked the 3 blocks. No one answered when I knocked, so I let myself in. The house was louder than I expected. TV on, music playing. Celine's voice carried from the kitchen. Laughter trailed behind. Logan looked up from the sink, then down again. "Hey, Mom." I held out the box. "Brought something." Celine walked over, took it, opened the foil. "Cookies." I nodded. She peeled one from the stack. Took a bite. "Sweet. But next time just Venmo the money instead." Laughter. I smiled small, pretended not to hear. The dining room was set for 6. Celine's parents were there. Her brother, too. They filled the long table with loud stories and full plates. Logan didn't look at me. No one offered a chair. There was a smaller table by the wall, foldable, one plate already set, plastic utensils, a paper napkin. I sat there. No one said anything about it. Celine passed a dish down the line. Logan got the new range installed this week. Top of the line, gas burners, convection, everything. Her mother clapped. "So fancy, what did that cost you?" Celine waved her hand. It was time. We're building equity. Logan looked proud. I chewed slowly. Carrots, some chicken. Nothing warm anymore. Mom, Logan said suddenly, "Can you not mention the house stuff tonight? It confuses people." I nodded once. Quiet. My hands stayed in my lap. After dessert, Celine handed out gift bags to her parents. Little candles, gift cards, matching socks. There wasn't one for me. Her father asked, "So Logan, what are your next steps with the place?" Celine answered for him. "We're thinking of converting the den. Maybe a nursery." They all turned to me. I smiled again, held my cup tighter. "Sounds exciting," I said. The walls felt far away. The window wouldn't stop rattling. I stared at the plastic fork on my plate, bent slightly at the neck. I left without saying goodbye. No one walked me out. The night was cold, but dry. My legs ached halfway home. I turned the porch light on, locked the door behind me, placed the empty cookie box on the counter. Then I walked into the bedroom and found the first box. I shut the trunk hard. The store trip drained me. Canned soup, rice, instant coffee. I'd stretched the coupons, made every dollar bend. I carried the bags inside, one at a time, back aching. The house was too quiet. Something was off. I stepped into the hallway and froze. My bedroom door was wide open. Inside, boxes, dozens of them, stacked up the walls, labeled in black marker books. Office kitchen extras. Holiday decor. None of them mine. I dropped the groceries. Walked in. The quilt was gone. The one I made with Marion the year she died. Gone. So was my chair. My mirror. A box sat on top of the dresser. Taped shut. I opened the closet. Half of it was packed. My sweaters crammed into the corner. Shoes pushed aside to make room for winter coats that weren't mine. I walked back to the kitchen and picked up the phone. Logan answered on the second ring. "Oh, hey, I meant to call. I stopped by earlier. You moved things." "Yeah, it was just easier. We needed somewhere to store extra boxes while we redo the garage. I figured your room made sense." "My room." "Just temporary, Mom. I didn't touch anything important." Celine said to be careful. "My quilt is gone." There was a pause. "I think she packed it for safekeeping." I said nothing. "You don't need to get upset," he added. "It's not like you use the room much anyway." I hung up. That night, I sat on the recliner in the living room, used an old throw blanket, curled into myself. The armrest jabbed my shoulder. My knees ached from the angle. The house felt tighter, smaller, not mine. At 2 a.m., I turned on the TV just for noise. Infomercials, vacuum deals, a new kind of ladder. I watched all of it. When morning came, I turned off the screen, stood up slow, and walked to the dresser in the hallway. I opened the bottom drawer, the one no one else knew about. I pulled the drawer all the way out. It stuck at first, swollen from humidity or time. I tugged harder. It gave in with a groan. Inside, receipts, stamps, an old ring box, and an envelope I didn't recognize. No return address. Just my name, full name, in blue ink. The handwriting looked careful, not familiar. I opened it. Inside, 3 pages. A notary stamp. A witness signature. The heading said, "Property Transfer Authorization." I froze. My name was printed clearly, Corliss and Drury. Underneath it, a signature that looked like mine, looked close. The loops matched, but something was wrong. It was dated March 14th. I was in the hospital that day. I remember the beeping, the white ceiling tiles, the oxygen tube taped to my cheek. I remember not even being able to hold a pen. My nurse had helped me press the call button when the dizziness started again. I flipped the last page. Logan's name filled the recipient line, full legal rights transferred, retroactive from the date of signature. My hands trembled. I didn't sign this. I read the fine print. Then again slower. I'd transferred the house apparently while sedated, while hooked to monitors, while fighting to keep my pulse from slipping below 50. A knot tightened in my chest. Not from the medicine I didn't have. From something colder, deeper. I folded the papers slowly, pressed the creases, slid them back into the envelope. Then I walked to the closet and pulled down the shoebox I hadn't touched in a decade. Inside, the original deed. The notarized trust from Harold's name, never fully updated. A spare checkbook. 2 letters from my first attorney. And the number for Ruth Franklin. I hadn't spoken to Ruth since she left town, but I kept the number anyway. I picked up the phone, and I dialed. I turned off the burner. The soup never boiled. Still, I poured it. Then I heard it 3 soft knocks. Not the front door, the back fence. I slipped on my shoes, crossed the kitchen, and opened the back screen. There she stood. Brown curls pulled into a loose bun, a Tupperware in one hand, a smile that hadn't changed. Isla. I blinked. "You've grown." She laughed. "It's been 10 years, Ms. Drury." "Corliss," I said. "You're not a kid anymore." She held up the container. Banana bread. My mom's recipe. "I was making a batch and thought of you." I opened the gate and waved her in. We sat at the small table by the window. I cut 2 slices. The bread was still warm. You used to tutor me every Tuesday, she said, smiling. 7th grade math. I cried over decimals. I chuckled. And you still passed. Because of you. She scanned the kitchen as she ate, paused. Her eyes landed on the envelope stuck under the fridge magnet. You sellin'. I followed her gaze. The deed, I asked. She nodded. That's a transfer form. From the look of it, someone submitted it without title verification. I felt my stomach shift. How do you know that she reached into her bag, pulled out a small card? Isla Moreno, paralegal Franklin and Rourke, LLP. I'm working with a title attorney downtown. I just do paperwork and research mostly. She stood, walked over, and gently pulled the envelope down. Slid the page halfway out. Her face changed. Do you remember signing this? I shook my head. I was hospitalized. I could barely lift my hand. She didn't say anything for a moment, then carefully slid the page back in. Corliss, if this was processed without your conscious consent, it's fraud. I swallowed. I have the original deed, I said. Harold left it in a trust. It was never legally overturned. Her eyes met mine, sharpened. Do you want help? She asked. I didn't answer right away, just stood. Walked to the hallway closet, pulled out the shoebox, set it on the table. Isla opened it. Her fingers moved fast shore. She pulled out the folded trust paper, read it twice, and sat back in the chair. I need to make a call, she said. And we'll need copies. I reached for the kettle, filled it halfway. Let me put on some coffee, I said. It's going to be a long week. I dragged the trash bin to the curb. Laughter spilled over the hedges. Not TV laughter, real. High, sharp, tangled with music. I turned toward the noise. Smoke rose above the fence. Grill smoke. Someone flipped something greasy. I smelled ribs, maybe chicken. The kind Logan used to beg for on holidays. I stepped onto the porch. From the edge of my yard, I could see through the slats. Celine was handing out plates. Logan stood at the grill, talking with her father. The kids darted across the lawn, giggling, water guns in hand. Their shoes kicked up grass I used to mow. My hand tightened on the porch rail. No one had said a word to me. Not an invite. Not a mention. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Scrolled to Logan's name. Typed, didn't know there was a barbecue today. Hope the kids are having fun. Sent it. Waited. 10 minutes. No reply. I texted again. I could drop off lemonade or cookies if you need. Another 10 minutes. Still nothing. I sat on the porch, back stiff. The sun dropped behind the house. Laughter rolled over again. One of the boys had sprayed his sister, and she shrieked. I reached for my coffee. Lukewarm now. I'd worn the blue cardigan today, the one Emma picked out for my birthday last year. She didn't look over once. No one did. The grill hissed. A cheer went up. Someone shouted, "Best barbecue yet." I closed my eyes. Last 4th of July, I bought the food, paid the caterer, took out folding chairs from the shed. This year, I didn't even know they owned a grill. I stood, walked inside, shut the door. The walls muffled the noise. I boiled water, poured it into the same mug. No sugar, no milk, just bitter. Back at the table, Isla's card sat beside the envelope. I stared at it, reached for it. The coffee burned my throat. I drank it anyway. Then opened the drawer, pulled out a notebook, and started writing names, dates, receipts. If I couldn't be part of their plans, I'd make my own. I pulled the garage door open hard. Dust swirled in the sunlight. The air was thick sour. Boxes sagged on rusted shelves. Paint cans stacked 3 high. Tools untouched for years. I moved slowly. My knees complained. I kept going. Something red caught my eye, tucked behind a gallon of dried primer flat, smooth too clean. I pulled it free. A folder, bright red. My name written across the top in thick black marker, Corliss. My stomach turned. I opened it. First photocopies, deeds, titles, Mortgage releases, all stamped, signed, all looked official, but they weren't mine. Next, copies of a power of attorney. 2 sets. One from years ago when Harold was sick, the other more recent, dated March. Same week I was in the hospital. Same signature I never gave. I flipped to the last page. A letter. Typed. Short. Thanks for everything, Mom. We've got it from here. Rest. Enjoy what's left. Logan and Celine, I stood there staring at the words. We've got it from here. I read it again, louder in my head each time, until the sentence wasn't words anymore, just noise. I slid the letter back into the folder. My fingers shook. I pressed them flat on the table, breathed through my nose. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were clearing the way. I looked around the garage. The things I'd stored. The shelves I'd built with Harold. The smell of old lumber. They were emptying me out, piece by piece. I walked back inside, set the red folder on the kitchen counter, opened my notebook, and added one more line. I pried the battery cover off the tiny recorder. It clicked back into place. Light flashed red, then blue. I slid it into the planter by the door, buried it just beneath the ivy, out of sight, but clear enough to catch voices on the porch. That night I left the porch light off. I sat in the dark. Curtains parted just enough. Cup of cold coffee in my hand. The air was still. At 8:37, headlights swept across the drive. Logan's truck. He didn't knock. Just unlocked the side gate and walked through with Celine close behind. They didn't speak until they reached the porch. She's basically dead on paper, Logan muttered. Celine laughed. Not a full laugh, short-clipped. Then let's finish the paperwork. I held still. Didn't blink. Logan sat on the top step. Once we file the next transfer, we can list it by spring. Market's climbing. And your mom, Celine, asked. Logan shrugged. She'll adjust. She always does. She forgets half of everything anyway. I mean, she signed it. Did she? Celine asked a little sharper. Another pause. Then Celine laughed again. Doesn't matter. The papers are clean. I swallowed hard. My mouth tasted like iron. She left me her entire life, Logan said. It's only fair I use it. Fair? Celine snapped gum. She owes you more than that. They stood. Gravel crunched. The gate clicked shut behind them. I waited until the engine turned over. Until the taillights disappeared. Then I stepped outside. Knees bent. Hands steady. I pulled the recorder out of the planter, carried it back inside, plugged it into the laptop Isla gave me, and listened again. I unlocked the drawer, pulled out the old key, and placed it in my coat pocket. The next morning, I took the early bus downtown. No one asked why. No one noticed. At the bank, I signed in, passed security, and waited. When the clerk called my name, I followed her down the narrow hall past thick metal doors to box 317. I turned the key. My hand didn't shake. Inside, 2 items, a sealed envelope, and the title. The original deed. Not a copy, not an update. The original. Still in my name. Still valid. No signatures added, no transfers processed. No mention of Logan. Just mine and Harold signed in blue ink sealed with a raised notary stamp from 1996. I lifted the envelope. It was yellowed at the corners. I opened it slowly, careful not to tear. Inside, 1 note. Folded twice. If they ever try to take it, Harold had written, "Show them you still hold it. You always did." I sat down right there on the small bench across from the vault wall, held the paper tight. He knew. Even then he knew. The copies Logan filed meant nothing. They took what looked like gold, but I held the real thing. I took the deed, the letter, and the key. Slipped them into my purse. Walked out into the cold. My house was never theirs. I stood at the bus stop and dialed Isla's number. She answered on the second ring. "It's time," I said. "We don't show our hand yet, but we start the clock." She didn't ask why. She just said, "Yes, ma'am." I gripped my bag tighter, crossed the street, walked home steady. And that night, I packed the red folder, the recorder, the deed, and the letter into one box, sealed it, labeled it, and slid it under my bed. I stepped into the law office at noon sharp. No receptionist. Just a bell above the door and the smell of old paper and leather chairs. Howard Greer came out from the back, thinner than I remembered. Same sharp eyes, same pressed cuffs. He didn't smile. He never had to. "Corliss Drury," he said. "Didn't think I'd see you again." I pulled the recorder from my coat, set it on his desk, then slid out the red folder. Finally, the deed. His brows lifted. We sat. He listened. Quiet. No interruptions. Logan's voice played once, then Celine's. Then silence. He hit stop. Folded his hands. "You've got leverage," he said. I opened the deed. "Original. No transfer. Trust intact," I said. He nodded. "That paper your son filed. It's trash without consent. Especially with this voice file. We've got fraud, misrepresentation, elder abuse if we push." I pulled out the letter from Harold. Howard read it. Blinked once. Set it gently on the desk. "I remember drafting this," he murmured. Harold insisted on the clause. "Said you'd need it one day." I didn't speak. Just sat. Watched the weight of it land on his desk like stone. Howard sat back. "We could file tomorrow." I shook my head. "Not yet. They think they've won." He smiled slightly. "So you want to wait?" "Until the right moment." He nodded again. "Then I'll prepare everything." Quietly. "When you're ready, we'll walk into court and change the temperature of the room." I stood, picked up my bag, left the folder with him. As I reached the door, he said, "They won't see you coming, Corliss." I looked back. They never did. I wrapped the frame in brown paper. No bow, no tag. Just a clean fold and a single piece of tape. At 6, I walked across the lawn. The music thumped through the siding. Celine's voice rang from the kitchen window, laughing, calling out drink orders like she was hosting a restaurant. She opened the door herself. "Oh," she said, "you came." I held out the gift. "Happy birthday." She took it, blinked, then waved me in like an afterthought. The table was full. Steak, wine, a cake that looked like it came from a catalog. Logan handed her a glass of red and kissed her cheek. I sat in the corner. No one moved a chair for me. I didn't ask. "Let's do gifts," someone shouted. Celine tore through them, a bracelet, gift cards, shoes, laughter, kisses. Then she reached mine. "What's this?" she said, glancing at the plain wrapping. She opened it, held up the frame. Empty, clean, nothing inside. The room quieted. A second, maybe 2. Then she laughed, loud, forced. "Well," she said, "someone forgot the photo." I just sipped my water. Logan looked over, confused. "Mom?" I smiled. "I figured you had everything else," I said. "Thought I'd leave space for what matters." She didn't reply. The table moved on. Dessert came. Someone turned the music up. I slipped out early, walked home slow, and left my porch light on. I logged into the account, clicked remove line, then another, then clicked cancel. The screen asked me if I was sure. I was. I stopped paying the bill that afternoon. By morning, my phone rang twice before I even finished my coffee. Logan. I didn't answer. By noon, he was on my porch. No knocking, just pacing. I opened the door slow. "Why is my phone off?" he snapped. "You'll have to call the company," I said. I did. They said the account was closed. I closed it, I said. He blinked. "I've been paying it for 7 years, I said. "You're 34. Figure it out." He opened his mouth, closed it. "You can't just," he started. "I can't," I said. I did. He turned and walked off without another word. That evening, Celine showed up. Didn't knock either. Just let herself in. "Wow," she said, arms crossed. "So we're just cutting services now." "You've been using that plan since college," I said. "It wasn't a family plan. It was mine." "Well, now you've made your point," she snapped. You're finally useless, and suddenly we're supposed to fend for ourselves. I didn't answer. She huffed, stormed out. I stood in the kitchen and listened to the sound of nothing, and for the first time in months, it sounded just right. I buttoned my coat, folded the invitation, walked the 3 blocks to Logan's house. The porch was swept. Lights dimmed just right. Wine glasses already poured. Inside, a long table waited. Not just family this time. 2 strangers in suits, clipboards, pens. Celine met me at the door with a smile too wide. "Glad you came," she said, voice syrupy. I nodded once, hung up my coat, sat in the chair at the far end, set slightly apart. Logan stood and tapped his glass. "We wanted tonight to be special," he said, "to make it official. Mom's transition to Ridgeview assisted living. I didn't move." Celine stepped in. "It's a lovely place. Modern. Safe. She'll have more support." The 2 men in suits nodded. One opened a folder, slid a stack of papers toward me. "Just formalities," Logan said. "This keeps things clean." No one made eye contact. I looked at the papers, didn't touch them. The first page was a declaration. The second, a power of attorney. The third, a release of property rights. I pushed the stack gently back across the table. "I'm not signing anything tonight," I said. Silence. Thick. Celine leaned forward. "We went through a lot of trouble to arrange this." "I know," I said. Logan tried to smile. "You don't have to move in this week. We just need to lock things in." I reached for my water, took a slow sip. Then I folded my napkin, set it down beside my untouched plate. The 2 notaries exchanged a look. "No signature," I said. "No move." I stood, smoothed my coat. "Thank you for dinner." And I walked out before anyone had the nerve to stop me. I filed the paperwork on Monday. Howard handled the rest. By Thursday, the summons went out. Saturday afternoon, Logan and Celine hosted another family update at their house. I arrived last, knocked once, waited. When Logan opened the door, I handed him the envelope. "You've been served." He froze. Celine stepped behind him. "What is this court date?" I said. "You'll want to read it." I left before they could follow. A week later, we stood in court. Family packed the back row. Cousins, neighbors, even Celine's sister. Whispering, watching. Logan wore a suit. Celine sat rigid, clutching her purse. Howard stood beside me, calm, prepared. The judge called our case. Howard approached the bench, laid out the original deed, the letter, the red folder, and finally, my small recorder. "We'll play the audio now," he said. The courtroom fell silent. Then Logan's voice echoed. "She's basically dead on paper," followed by Celine's laugh. "Then let's finish the paperwork." A gasp, audible, from someone in the back. The judge raised his hand. "Enough." He turned to Logan. "You committed legal fraud against your mother and encouraged third-party coercion." Celine opened her mouth. The judge didn't let her speak. "I'm freezing the property filings effective immediately. This case moves to criminal review." Logan turned pale. Howard leaned over to me, whispered. That was the first hammer. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I just stood tall while Logan stared at the floor and Celine clenched her fists in silence. I opened the curtain. Empty swing set. No bike. No chalk on the driveway. The kids hadn't come by in 4 days. I texted once. No reply. I didn't try again. At the grocery store, Celine stood near the dairy aisle, loud animated phone to her ear. "It's been a hard week," she told someone. "She's confused. Age does that. Not everything is how it seems." I kept walking. At the pharmacy, the clerk looked up as I stepped forward. "Hey, Miss Corliss," she said softer than usual. Heard what happened. She didn't say more. Didn't need to. I signed the receipt, took the paper bag, walked out. Later that evening, I opened the mailbox. 3 cards. 2 with no return address. 1 from the woman across the street. "We've seen." We believe you. I set it on the table, pressed it flat. At dusk, I stood on the porch. Celine's car passed without slowing. No wave. Lights behind curtains didn't flicker like they used to. People were watching, listening, and this time not to her. Inside, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee. I had one more thing to prepare. Howard filed the paperwork just after sunrise. By noon, the forged deed was void. The county clerk stamped it. The judge's ruling echoed on the form. Ownership returned to me legally, fully, indisputably. Howard called. It's done. I didn't speak. Just breathed once deep. By afternoon, Logan's accounts were flagged. The trust I'd built, the one he siphoned from frozen. The withdrawals under review. The forged signatures noted. I walked through my house like it belonged to me again. The boxes he left in my bedroom. Gone. The extra key he kept disabled. I opened the hall closet. My quilt was back on the top shelf, neatly folded. Smelled like cedar and memory. At the back of the living room drawer, I placed a fresh folder this time with my signature on every page. Then I opened the blinds. Sun poured in. No hiding anymore. Just clean light and control. I watched the taillights fade. No shouting. No final words. Just boxes. Suitcases. A slammed door. Celine left first tight grip on her keys. Her face turned from the porch. She didn't look back. Logan stayed 10 minutes longer, walked once through the living room, touched the side of the wall, then followed her out without a word. By the time I stepped onto the porch, the driveway was empty. No oil stains. No shoe prints. Just gravel. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood there and breathed. In the kitchen, I filled the kettle, ground the beans, waited for the water to boil. I reached into the cabinet, took down a single mug, poured one cup, sat in my chair by the window, the one they never noticed. Steam rose. The sun came through clean glass, and for the first time in years, the house was quiet on my terms. I folded the papers slowly. Clean edges, crisp corners. The red folder, emptied, now lay beside me on the table. I picked up the deed, slipped it into the envelope. Next, the note. For someone who helps others, who knows what's worth keeping, and what should be passed on. I signed it. Just my name. I added the copy of the forged documents, the audio transcript, and one photo, me and Isla, from years ago. She was 12. We were planting tulips. Her hands were covered in dirt. She was smiling. I wasn't, but I remembered wanting to. I sealed the envelope, wrote her name in steady print, Isla Marin, dropped it at the post office myself. No return address. When I stepped back outside, the sky was overcast. The wind tugged at my sleeves, but inside, quiet and clear. I walked home, slow, steady, and put on a fresh pot. I opened the door before the sun finished rising. The wood beneath my feet still held the night's cold. I stepped out, sat down, pulled the blanket over my legs, poured black coffee into my mug, white ceramic, faded letters. It read, "Still here." I held it steady, let the steam hit my face. The sky turned soft, then gold, then real. My house quiet. Mine. The swing creaked once in the breeze. The gravel drive stretched out untouched. No cars, no boxes, no voices raised behind my back. Just this porch, this land, this silence. Earned, chosen, kept. I sipped, let it burn a little, and watched the sun rise over what was always mine.